During the summer of 2007, a couple was recreationally diving off the shore of Aruba when they located what seemed to be an underwater camera. Eager to see what was on it, they quickly surfaced back to their boat. After hooking it up to their computer, they opened the first picture and couldn't believe what they saw. This was the first picture that popped up. It seems to be a Megalodon opening its mouth, getting ready to eat the cameraman. Could it be real? Let me know in the comments what y'all think. Needless to say, they didn't dive for the rest of their vacation. Despite no longer being a musician, former Blink-182 guitarist Tom Delong has found his passion outside of the band. Who would have thought after taking his final step off stage with Blink-182, Delong would find himself being an important part of the future with Extraterrestrials. Using his resources, Delong has kept pressure on governments to admit that UFOs are here and they're here to stay. But it's much more complicated than that. It's how are we going to build our future and our relationship with these beings? Who are they? Should we be building military technology, says Delong. The former Blink-182 guitarist has been a believer as long as he can remember, and also claims that he's had a few encounters with aliens as well. According to the rest of the band, he was bringing them up and saying they exist long before the government finally opened the door to it. At the time, his bandmates would just laugh it off because this was way before it became mainstream and it was still taboo. And in spite of the laughs and the slight criticisms, Tom stood strong and proclaimed what he truly believed. And now, just a few years later, he's writing books and he's on panels that are actually making important decisions with government officials pertaining to aliens. You could even go as far as saying he's pretty much a ufologist and he's integral in the movement going forward. You have to understand, said Tom, I've been in this for a long time. I've had my phone tapped by the government. I even have sources within the government that give me information, he claims. Throughout his journey, Tom has even been in congressional hearings with ufologists, trying to convince Congress to turn over the documents and admit UFOs exist. But throughout his years of obtaining this knowledge, he had come up with a strong belief that aliens communicate telepathically, that you can actually channel and direct thoughts to extraterrestrials and they'll pick them up. Or if you're going to go looking for them or try to encounter them, that this is one of the best ways to get results. They can somehow read your thoughts and your frequency. I've done some pretty weird stuff for this industry. People wouldn't believe me if I told them. The following two encounters he had were actually one at Area 51 and the other in Italy. We only had 2 nights, he stated. The first one, we stayed at Groom Lake. So it was about midnight and he was with a couple other friends at Groom Lake. They were sitting around a campfire and there was zero action at this point. They were camped out at the northern side near the cliff where they do a lot of test runs on UFO tech. Being slightly discouraged, they throw a couple more logs on the fire just to stoke it up, and Tom convinces his friends that the encounter probably won't happen till around 3 o'clock anyway. That seems to be the time when you get the most action, late at night, early morning. They all agreed and they were going to go for it, but unfortunately, they all passed out by 1 o'clock. And it was around 3 o'clock, Tom was sound asleep when he heard some commotion outside of his tent. It sounded like a group of people talking outside of his tent. And yes, they were speaking English. He instantly knew they were there. He believed it was about a dozen of them, and they were speaking our language, very fast and very concise. He couldn't exactly make out what they were saying, but he just knew it was definitely extraterrestrials. They were curious as to what he and his friends were doing there. They knew that they were harmless, and they posed no threat to them. After listening for about a half hour, 45 minutes, Tom crashes out. And the next morning, he asks his buddies, "Did you guys hear it?" The one buddy says, "No, I didn't hear anything." The other, "Yes, I heard them, the whispers. Yes, they were here," said Tom. They both heard multiple beings outside of their tent that night. And that was one of Tom's first encounters. The next one was much different. He was called over to Sicily, Italy to investigate a phenomena. Apartments seemingly combusting into flames. Escorted by the Italian Navy SEALs, what happens next will blow your mind. Though he didn't give the exact date and time of the incident, I believe that it was more recent than we might think, like within the last 5 years. So, by officials, he was called to Sicily, Italy to investigate a phenomena that was taking place. Apparently, apartments near the coast were combusting, just literally catching on fire out of nowhere. Microwaves, beds, couches, just poof, and they were burning in mad flames. Nobody could understand what the heck was going on, so they invited an investigative team of ufologists to check it out. At the time, Tom was being escorted by what's the equivalent of the US Navy SEALs in Italy. They quickly found that whatever it was using direct energy weapons, or direct energy to cause these spontaneous combustions. They quickly concluded that the direct energy seemed to be coming from out in the ocean, in the water. And as the team stood there and watched and looked out on the water, That's when they saw them. Numerous UFOs out of nowhere. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, so the head of the investigation orders the Navy SEALs to go grab a civilian chopper that was nearby and head out to the water to see what they could find. As they approached a couple miles out, everything seemed normal, when suddenly, poof, out of the water comes a craft. It pops up about 50 feet, eye level with the chopper, and stare on in both awe and absolute terror, when suddenly, pew, a direct energy weapon is fired at soldiers. They incapacitate the chopper, and it goes down into the ocean. Then, at what seemed like light speed, they plummeted back into the water, without a splash. Lucky for the men, they didn't blow up the chopper. They rather just maimed it, so it would actually land kind of nicely in the water, allowing them to bail and live. When they got back and told their story, Tom knew exactly why they targeted them. Because at the time, there was flights being held all over the area, from choppers to personal planes to even jets, and not one interaction with UFO. Tom went on to explain that they saw the soldiers' intentions. They read their thoughts and channeled them. They knew exactly what they were doing out there, looking for the extraterrestrials. As a result, they thought they'd give them a show. They popped out of the water and shot the chopper down, letting them know it's just that easy for them. Their technology and their way of life is much more advanced than ours, said Tom. They later that day went on to show Tom the reports of all the UFO sightings in the Mediterranean. And there were hundreds, if not thousands of them. And these sightings are happening every single day. And not only that, they're increasing in frequency. Thank you all as always for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. And stay in the love, stay in the light. Always be kind to others. I am out.